Namaskaram, Mami. Namaskaram, Vijay.
Namaskaram.
Namaskaram, Prasid. Namaskaram, Sai Pranav.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's such an honor to have you guys.
Sure, it's a pleasure, Prasid. So we are very happy to be here. So
thank you for having us.
Yes, and being it as our first vodcast, it's really, really nice for you guys to show up today.
Yep, thank you.
So let's jump right into our topics today. So tell us about yourself. Like, give us a little brief discussion about your gurus and your childhood.
About your gurus and your childhood.
Okay. I was actually in Madras. It used to be called, now that Chennai used to be called as Madras when I was growing up. And I studied in Madras, my elementary school and middle school. And I started learning music from a very close by teacher. And she was, her name was Subbalakshmi. And she was a disciple of Kalakadu Ramanathan, who was very famous at that time. Yeah, it was really very nice, and she used to teach us very nicely. And I had a lot of interest and passion for music from that age. And I used to perform in my school activities. I used to take part and win prizes in the competitions and all that. So that's how my learning started. And a little later, after middle school, we had to move to Pune. So there I had to continue my music because I was loving it. And fortunately, I found a teacher who was a gold medalist from the Carnatic College of Music. And she had a beautiful voice and she was great. And her name was P.K. Rajalakshmi. And she was very nice to accept me as her student. And I started learning from her. And I learned quite a bit. I learned for more than 7-8 years with her. And a lot of kirtanams and ragam and all that she taught me. And I was very lucky to have one of our friends who was a musicologist. And he was thorough with all the theory part of Carnatic music. And he was very much interested in my singing. And then, so he used to visit us and make me sing and practice for hours together. 4 hours.
Wow.
Will go like that. When I was in college also, used to come. The next day there would be exam, but he will be there and making me sing. So sometimes I had to feel bad, because I wouldn't be able to prepare for my exam. But anyway, that was it. It was really a good time I had, and then I used to learn like that. That's how.
Yeah, it sounds like, obviously you had some bond with your teachers like that. It's really nice.
Wow. And 4 hours of practice. Wow. 4 hours of practice. That must have been quite of a load.
4 hours is minimum, I'm telling it. It could have gone more than that. Weekends and
all. Oh my God.
Noon, 2 o'clock we'll start and it end by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock when we have to go for
my God.
Dinner.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That must have been amazing.
So tell us about, do you have any personal, very memorable experience with any of your gurus? Would you mind telling us about that?
When I was learning in Chennai, there was an occasion when our teacher brought D.K. Pattamal to our music class.
Wow.
Oh, that was an awesome experience because she was very nice, and then she asked us all to sing and appreciated us, and then she was introduced to us, and it was a great experience. So that I remember that incident. So it was a nice experience.
Wow.
Wasn't there also an occasion where maybe you were a little older, where you ended up at Sri Papanasam Shivan's residence?
Yeah.
Or something?
Yeah.
Wow.
For school, we had to do some Papanasam Shivan's kriti for performing. So, Murugane Bajimaname. right?
Wow, beautiful Kriti.
So we were taken to Papanasham Shivan sir's house.
Wow.
He was
Wow.
so we were there in his house, and he sang, and then we could learn from him. That was an experience too.
Oh,
Yeah,
that must have been really
Wow.
nice.
yeah,
Amazing.
right.
Vijayna, can you tell us some your gurus and your childhood experiences?
So I have only had one guru, and that is my mother. She's sitting right next to me here. So all the music that I've learned formally has been through her. I think I started learning Sarali Varsai and all those things, when I was in maybe middle school. And it wasn't really till much later, till I was really maybe in, say, later in high school and college, that I really started learning more of the, even starting into, more of the advanced varnams and kritis and all that was much later. So a huge portion of, unlike, you both, where you're learning, and practicing and performing at such a young age and, doing fantastic work, I actually started much later. And it was only, like I said, during my college years that I really started getting into singing more advanced kirtanams and learning more advanced varnams. And all of that, and all the technicalities and learning the nuances. One thing that I think I had at that time, which helped me immensely, was I used to listen to a lot of music.
Something I really love.
So what I used to do at that time, and this is around the kind of early to mid 90s I would say, is I used to have a lot of cassette tapes. Recordings of the old masters of Carnatic music. And I'm talking about recordings of people like the Alatur brothers and Maduramani Iyer and Chemamudi Srinivas Iyer and K.V.
My personal favorites.
Yeah, so exactly. So I used to have these cassettes and I used to listen to them every night. So after dinner, I had it used to be called a Walkman.
Walkman, yeah.
And you put headphones on and you could listen to it. And I would listen for a couple of hours every night. And that's how I learned a lot of the, a lot of the more nuances, if you will, of how different people sing the same kriti. So for instance, Amma would teach me one kriti. Say, maybe it will be in Kalyani. So now if you hear the same Kalyani kriti sung by 3 other people, you can understand how they maybe interpret that same thing. So I used to do that a lot. So that helped me kind of then develop my own understanding, of the music and of the kirtanams. And that's kind of how I got, kind of really started in all this. And, it's around that time that I also got interested in kind of my other interest around playing keyboards and, recording and music production and composing and all that kind of came around that time. Yeah.
Wow. Beautiful.
Really nice.
Talking about other interests besides Carnatic music, what were other interests that you really like to pursue during that childhood time?
Oh, for me, studies and music. That was the only thing that I was concentrating on. Nothing much. Of course, playing and all that, nothing so serious about it. We used to play around in the evenings and all that. But as a passion or interest, music was the only thing. We used to listen to, in those days, there were no TV or anything. So we used to listen to AAR programs from the radio. So 9:30, there used to be big kacheris of all these famous musicians. So we sit and listen very carefully. The whole family. My mother used to sing and my grandmother also used to sing and all that. So it was musically, everybody was inclined and they were all interested too. So we used to watch that AAR, All India Radio programs very interestingly every day. So that's how we used to spend the time in the evening.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we never used to listen to cinema music in those days, to be honest with you. So I never knew any of the Tamil film songs,
Tamil
Hindi
films.
film songs. Yes.
And Vijayna, any interest that you?
I think I had lots of other interests, and that perhaps took me away from focusing a lot on music. In my younger days, I used to, and I still do when I get a chance to read, books, right? So I used to be really into that for a while, and I was always interested in movies and kind of how movies, and not just from the perspective of um, entertainment, as watching movies for fun, but also learning more about how movies were made, how do
Like
you
the film aspects and everything.
the filmmaking aspect. So I spent, I actually ended up taking some classes at the University of Minnesota that focused on screenwriting and things like that, just because I was interested in those things. But yeah, when I was much younger, there were, most of the time was, like Mami said, you either went to school and studied, and besides casual play here and there, you focused, at least in my college years, most of my spare time was spent in music, because I seriously got to learning how to play the keyboards, and I started performing actually around that time. So there used to be these Indian student associations at the U of M, and we used to organize programs for every, like, Diwali, Holi, and they would be like cultural programs. And the number of Indian students here at the time was much smaller than what it is now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so actually I started, I met up with a few people and we started performing there. So I remember probably 96, 97. So my second, third year in college, I was probably regularly performing in,
Wow.
and that was all light music. So all film music. So that was another interest of mine, was film music.
Film music.
Carnatic music. So film music. And then, so the local Tamil association, would do something, we would perform there. So lots of that was happening in kind of that mid to late 1990s and early 2000s.
Wow. Awesome.
Wow. It's really nice. And I actually wanted to ask, it just spurred my mind. Do you guys have any favorite artists or like musicians that you just love to listen to, like whenever you feel like stressed or anything? Is there like one particular musician you love to listen to?
Not just one, but a few. I like Sudha Raghunathan. I like, from my younger age, I used to like her voice and the way she used to sing. So I used to learn many of the songs from her recordings. Sudha Raghunathan's. Early, when I was in college and all that. Yeah, she used to sing that time only. Yeah.
Or MLB, what are you talking
MLB, I used to listen.
Yeah.
Then once Sudha Raghunathan must be much later.
Sudha Raghunathan was much,
when I was very young.
Early 2000s, right?
Who are you listening to?
Yeah, when I was young, when I was MLB, DK Patamal, MS Subbulakshmi, mainly, and then Shamam, we used to listen, and all those top musicians, male musicians, all that I used to listen. But later on, coming here, and when I was after my age 20 or so, I used to like these younger now artists who are popular, like Soumya and Sudha Raghunathan.
That was all much later, right? After we came here. Mid to late 90s, I think, is when we got introduced to Sudha Raghunathan, Soumya, Vijays.
That would have been mid to late 90s and early 20s, 2000s.
Exactly.
Yeah, I used to like this way of singing and all that. That's good.
Yeah. I think for me, I again, because I've listened to so many people, I mean, my all-time favorite is always Sri K.V. Narayan Swami.
Me too. I like.
Yeah, I can agree with you both on that one.
Yeah. So for me, his singing, his style of singing, his approach to the music, his clarity in the sahitya, but also things like what Mami was just saying, the way he would approach a raga. It would take you maybe the first 10 seconds of an alapanam to understand what ragam he was singing, And if you listen to maybe another 30 to 60 seconds, you could even guess what kirtanam he was
Yeah,
going to sing.
exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I want to tell you. Yeah,
So-
in those days, those musicians used to sing so nicely the ragam that will make you think, and then, oh, this could be this.
Yeah, the
Okay.
kirtane.
Yeah.
And it'll be exactly that.
Yeah, and exactly, and you know that. But so what that also tells you, you know, for me, the reason I like him is because of all the musicians that I've listened to, and every one of them is great in their own way, right? Nothing to be taken away
Yeah.
from them. But those were the things that I was able to pick up when I listened to his music. And so, like, even now, you know, Sai Pranav, when you asked, like, if I feel like I want to listen to a lot of Carnatic music, my first go-to will on YouTube will be to find some recording of
KVN.
KVN and play that for a while, and then, you know, then kind of explore from that
Right.
point.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that because in the car, if you turn on the radio, it's KVN.
Right. Yeah, he's a very, you know, he's very much liked by lots of us. So yeah.
So, Mami, obviously, in Carnatic music, there are kacheris, and it's a very well-known thing to present an arangetram to show mastery, or not even arangetram, or just sing concerts as a sign of mastery in Carnatic music. Can you tell us about your first arangetram or first concert that you had?
Okay, going back, this when I was in high school, maybe I was 15 or 16. I gave my first concert. That was in Pune. So while I was learning there. And in those days, we didn't have like formal arangetram like nowadays you all have.
Right.
So ours was our first concert. Our teachers will come and everybody, all the friends and everybody, the families will come. So like that, it was conducted, and it really went off very well and gave me a lot of confidence and continued interest in music.
Do you remember where it was?
It was in Pune.
Where, you know, like where in Pune?
Where in Pune?
Remember?
Say Bhajanamaram.
Okay, so it was. So that was a temple near where we used to live in Pune.
Temple near. Okay.
Like one of the
Ganesha
temples
temple.
there.
Yeah.
Ganesha. Okay.
There I performed. And then it was a regular feature. Every year I used to give Bhajan kacheris there. And during Ayyappa season, there will be lots of concerts around in the city, in different places. They used to invite, and then we used to I used to go and perform. And so that was continuing. And at the same time, I used to sing for Bharatanatyam also.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bharatanatyam arangetram?
Yes.
Wow.
And I think Bharatanatyam this is program.
Just regular kacheris. Programs.
Just for programs, yeah.
Programs I used to sing. Yeah.
Wow.
It's really nice.
So is there any piece that you remember that you love to sing in every concert? Like you would sing that piece a lot? Like
any kirtanam or piece that you used to like to sing a lot?
Oh, okay. I used to like Todi quite a bit, so I used to do that ragam and kirtanams. And much of the other Tukkuda, like smaller songs which you end up, there used to be a request for the same song. I used to sing Uttukadu Venkata Subbayya's kritis. Navavarnams I learned. So all those kirtanams I used to sing. And also some of the Purandaradas kritis. So quite a few.
Nice.
Yeah.
So obviously first concerts can be a bit of a scary thing. So how do you happen to remember how you felt before you performed your
Oh
concert?
yeah, it's a nervous. I used to feel nervous even today when I go onto the stage and start singing. That nervousness was always there right from the beginning. So, but once you start singing and focus on that, slowly that nervousness will go away.
Mm.
When you people must be experiencing that when you sit on the stage and sing.
Yeah. Yeah.
We still get butterflies, but
That's quite natural. Like
Yeah.
only I should tell you one experience which I had about the nervousness you're asking. I was in 10th grade or something, and I was studying in Madurai.
Mm.
So there, I used to take part in all the competitions and sing in the school activities.
Mm.
So I learned Devaram and Devaram mainly, yeah, from the temple, Madurai Meenakshi Amman temple.
Mm.
Oduvar, they are called as Oduvars.
Mm.
So they teach these Devaram. So several Devaram. So some of the students, we went and learned from him, and we entered a competition and we won prizes. And I was very happy.
Wow.
Yeah, we had to by heart all those 200, 300 Devarams and then perform there.
Wow.
Another time, I practiced one Bharatiyar's song and went for a competition.
Mm.
You won't believe, when I went onto the stage and took the mic, I opened, nothing came. My mind became
Oh.
blank.
Oh my gosh.
Maybe because I was so nervous or something like that happened. I had prepared so nicely, and everybody was looking at me, but I couldn't
Yeah.
sing.
oh
I
my.
couldn't sing.
Wow.
So I had to excuse myself and came out.
Mm.
Oh, that's
But fortunately, my parents or relatives were all around there. None of them scolded me or anything. They
Yeah.
only said, it is okay. Maybe
That's
you're
good.
nervous. That's why it has happened. So don't worry. It's quite simple. You should have taken it easy and sang there. So they gave me good advice on that.
Mm. That's
Sometimes
good.
the nervousness may lead to something like this, but later on, I somehow developed, that we should not get unnecessarily nervous and then spoil the program. So try to bring out the best in you. Maybe it may not be that you'll be able to sing the same way as you sing at home, but still you will be doing some 75 to 80% there,
Yeah.
which itself is good.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's always nice to have your parents' support and relative support in that situation.
That.
Yeah.
That's very nice.
That is what you need. Yeah.
it's really amazing.
And Vijay, can you tell us about your first concert experience?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I think my first concert on stage, I remember, actually was not a Carnatic music concert at all. I had, because I had started playing keyboards and singing, film music. I actually got, as I said, invited to one of those community events. So I still remember the first song I sang on stage by myself was a Malayalam song, which was at a Malayalam association function in the Twin Cities. And I don't remember whether it was Christmas or Onam. It was one of those two event functions for which they organized a function. So I went on stage and I sang a Malayalam film song from a movie called Mani Chitrathal. And it was a song sung by the great Sri Yesudas. So I learned that, and I was extremely nervous. I was extremely nervous because I'd never sung on stage before that point. And this is probably 95, 96, that that time, and I was playing the keyboard and singing by myself. So I remember that was
Wow.
the very first, and I only sang one song on stage, right?
The coordination must be unbelievable.
Yeah, it was tough, but you know, it was good because it gave me confidence from that point on. Even though I was extremely nervous that first time, um, I remember doing reasonably well. I don't think I sang extremely well. I sang, you know, reasonably okay, enough that, you know, people started calling me and saying, okay, we should do this again. You know, we should do this for the next event. We should do this for the Tamil event. You know, etc. etc.
But still, it must have been really a good performance if people were to, like, you know, ask you for
Yeah.
gigs like that.
Maybe, right? So that's kind of how that happened. And then I think the first time I sang, I think Carnatic music on stage was probably at one of the Tyagaraja Aradhanas that, and we can talk about that a bit later. You know, that started here around again the
95,
kind of
90s.
96 time frame, and Amma was one of the co-founders of that.
Mm.
And the way it used to be a much bigger affair those days. We used to have lots of people singing the Pancharatnas on stage. And so I participated in that. And then after the Pancharatnams, there would be solo singing. Everyone would get to sing, you know, one song each, etc., etc. So I sang in that. I remember that probably again around 96 or so. I don't know if it was the very first song, but one of the first songs I sang like that was a Tyagaraja composition by called Vararagalaya.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful composition.
Yeah, Senju Kambodi.
Senju.
So that was probably one of the first songs I sang on stage by myself. That was a Carnatic song. So yeah, and again, it was fun. I was nervous, but you know, I enjoyed it.
Yeah. At the end of the day, that's the most important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about, like, you know, coming to Minnesota and you know, just having a concert here. So let's talk about, like, you know, from moving from India to Minnesota. Like, how did you guys feel the move was? Like, was it like, you know, did you guys feel really a little hesitant at first? Like, tell us about that.
Move from India to Minnesota.
Yeah, I moved on in 1988 because uncle came here in 87 and I joined him in 88, I remember. But I was working also in India in Defense Accounts Department as an accounts officer.
Wow.
I took actually time off from the work for 2 years. So because I had some leave to my credit and came here, and I stayed here until 90 June.
90 June.
And in 90, I had to go back with Vijay. Vijay also came to Minnesota in 89, and then we both returned to India in 90. And stayed there for 4 years because I wanted to complete my assignment at work.
Yeah.
And then came back here after resigning my job there. I came here in 1994.
94.
Vijay joined in 1995. So in 88, when I came, immediately I used to sing and people just came to know, the friends. Word of mouth, people knew that I was singing, and I was invited to perform I remember at the Hindu Mandir here.
Hindu Mandir.
Old one.
Yeah.
In Central Street. So there I performed concert there.
Yeah.
And it was well appreciated, and it was really good. And I started teaching here to students. So there were quite a few kids who came, and kids as well as adults. So they all came, and almost 25, 30 people I used to teach at that time. And then I had to go back in 94. No, I went back in 90 and came back at 94. So, and after coming only, we did the Aradhana started.
I think
Aradhana started.
I think what was different at that time was, I think, since you were more used to you already knew what it was like here. The second time you came back,
it was not a shock.
It was not as big of a shock to kind of
Right.
know the
People.
place.
Already I knew
Right.
the
A
people.
lot of people.
Most of them, a lot of them.
And did you have any music students who kind of started again when you came back? Like people who you knew?
With me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A few of them?
Yes.
Yeah.
They joined back again after my coming back. They wanted to learn.
Mm.
So I started teaching them too. Yeah, it was nice. So mainly, and then at that time there were so many programs came up, like Ragmala's
Ragmala.
Kalyana.
Yeah.
That was aired, like they did 4 or 5 shows, and myself and Vijay also sang.
Oh yeah, that was one of the earlier shows we did here too.
Earlier.
Yeah, earlier shows, Ragmala.
Probably 97.
Yeah.
I want to say 1997.
97.
It was, that was the first time
here I sang for the Bharatanatyam.
Sang for Bharatanatyam here. And it was probably the first time I sang extensively on stage, meaning not like just one song or 2 songs.
Yeah.
Amma sang the main, there was one other singer, and there were certain portions for which they needed a male voice. And for whatever reason, they asked me to sing because I think I could pull off some of those things, even though it was swarams and jatis and all. I had a knack for picking that up. So I did that, and that was probably 97, I think. It was, I mean, coming from India was, a bit of a shock initially also for me. It's a new place, new people, you don't know that many things. But I think the one good thing we had was we somehow were able to find a close group of Indian friends. And at that time, there weren't that many Indians in Minnesota. And we are talking about, mid-90s. It was a lot less than today. Especially if you talk about people who were, say, in the South Indian community or people who knew Carnatic music. I mean, it was much smaller.
Yeah.
But we kind of made friends, and you got in, and then you kind of become part of it, right? It took a while, but it was good. I mean, all in all, Minnesota is a very welcoming place. People are nice, in general, and like I said, once you kind of start living here, it went pretty well.
So yeah, it really sounds like Minnesota itself for you guys worked out really well.
Yeah.
And it must have been like a really nice move, just like, get people to come together, start forming Carnatic music and getting like Minnesota into like a big community for Carnatic music.
Yeah, so, I think. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I wasn't going to say much. Go ahead.
No. So I was just going to say, I think you're right. It was good. And I think it was around 95, 96 when Amma, you and a few of the others decided to do the first Tyagaraja.
First Tyagaraja Aradhana.
Yeah, and I think.
Yeah.
Who all, and when?
Myself.
Yeah, who all were there?
Amma was there. Myself. And then the first year only, I think Nirmala was not there. She started in 96, I think.
Second
year she came. So from that time onwards, even Nirmala. We three mainly we were, because a lot of people, and we wanted to standardize the version that we sing for the Aradhana. Because when you sing in a group, we want it to be, unified.
That's right.
Good presentation. So we used to give training for all the people who were interested in singing the Aradhana, Pancharatna Kritis. So we made out notes and everything. We used to
notations.
Have notation, and we used to get together in someone's place and then have time 2-3 hours we will spend and try to practice all the Pancharatna Kritis before going on to the stage. And no doubt it was really a great grand success. Each and every year, year after year, people loved it and started coming in great numbers.
Yeah. And
so,
Cyber and I also love going to the Aradhana these days.
Such a great experience.
Very informal in those days. There was no involvement of any other standard organizations as such, like this society or some other organization.
Yeah.
Nowadays we have, right?
Yeah.
Music, IMSOM is sponsoring it.
IMSOM.
Yeah.
And Layasaram is sponsoring the one in January.
Also sponsoring. So in those days, nothing was there. We friends got together and then we practiced for our own will and pleasure. We went to the stage and performed.
Yeah.
That was liked by many people, and then we also enjoyed, and then the audience also enjoyed it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Amazing. So it just brings all the togetherness within all of us. It's just must have been like a very vibrant and just like an amazing experience for all you guys, just coming every year and just having this kind of a.
And I think if I remember, if I think back, those first few years, I would say the first 3 to 5 years, the first year was, I think, probably relatively small in terms of how many singers. And I know at that time we didn't have a mridangam player in the first year, so we used to have tabla as the accompaniment.
Wow. Interesting.
Sri Marcus Wise, I think.
Marcus Wise.
1 year early on.
Yeah.
And then
violinist
also Ramanathan was there.
Yeah.
She used to play, but so we had some vocalists, but not a lot of like accompanying artists. Right? So the musicians who could say play other instruments were very few. And I think it was only probably the second, third year we were able to invite some mridangam player from other
states. Yeah.
Where they could come and they would play, for the Aradhana, for that day.
Yeah.
And then, so it was, I think, one thing I recollect was it was very well anticipated, like if the Aradhana was going to come, it was like a big deal the first few years, because everyone would get together and practice. And and when I say practice, it's not like for one Aradhana that they would do 2 or 3 practices. They would practice for weeks and months. For 3 months.
Oh.
People would get together and practice at a time. And
with the Pancharatnams, we used to sing other kritis of the other composers also. So we had to teach those songs also to the people. So we in all after the Pancharatnams, we used to sing 4 or 5 kritis.
So Dikshita compositions, Shama Shastri, Dikshita, and Purandaradasa. Those were the ones that we. So teaching. One of the things that was true at that time is a lot of the people who would come to sing in the Aradhana were not as trained as others. So lots of people didn't know all the Pancharatna Kritis, they didn't know all these other Kirtanams. So if you had to do a full program, you had to actually teach them. So that's how I ended up learning all the Pancharatnams that I know. I don't know all of them, 3.5 right now. So I learned because I also participated in those times. And that's how lots of others in the Twin Cities picked it up at the time. And so it was very, it was highly anticipated event because it was community driven. And I remember it was like a big occasion, because people would come and there would be like 200 people in the audience. And you would have food, that would be
crazy.
So yeah, it was
after
fun.
After Pancharatnams, we had a group singing also.
Oh.
Small groups.
Small groups.
Yeah. People get together and prepare 3, 4 kritis. Major kritis and other popular ones and Tillana and all that. So like that, Nirmala's students will have one group. My students will have one group. So like that we used to have, and that was fun. We had a great time.
Kind of way to showcase different, different paradigms.
Different styles. Yeah. So Vijayna, Mami, I see a studio behind you. Do you run a studio? I think it was Digi Raga was called. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So that was so. That's a good thing you bring up. So what I started doing, a lot as I kind of started on my music journey, I really got interested in, as I said, playing keyboards, right? So I started, I still remember one of my first keyboards that I cherished a lot was a Yamaha PSR series keyboard, which is still in one of my keyboard boxes.
Oh.
Still haven't given up.
Wow.
Wow.
Bought it back in '96. So when I started playing that, I really started getting interested in trying to understand how to then make that music, right? So not just the singing part, but how is so if you listen to film songs, then how, how are they arranging the music? How do they get all different instruments to play together, right? All of the things I started really thinking about and trying to learn. And when you think about like the late 90s, the internet wasn't as big, right?
Right.
So it had just started. Everyone
Right.
had an email ID, but Google was yet to be invented. There was YouTube, and so I started, researching just through talking to people, going to music stores. I would go to Guitar Center and go through, talk to the staff there. And so over time, as I got more into keyboards, I started getting into what one could call keyboard programming or keyboard arrangement. So I upgraded to another keyboard where then you could kind of do sequencing and programming of your own music, right? So I started doing that, and then I got interested in kind of music production. So then I started getting interested in saying, okay, now how do you record it? How do you make like a formal piece of music? And in those times, people used to release CDs, right? So how do you make a CD? How do you get songs recorded? How do you do multi-track recording? So I kind of learned all that on my own. I didn't go to any school. I didn't take any course. I read a bunch of books. And at that time,
very self-taught.
Self-taught, yeah. So that was the time, kind of the late 90s, early 2000s is when the computer-based recording was really kind of coming into the fore. It had already started almost 10 years ago. It was not the first time. But a lot of the Windows-based software were becoming better and more accessible to home musicians. So that's when I actually started. I bought a Windows PC. I set stuff up at home. And that's when I kind of decided to kind of make my own studio. So then I kind of gave it the name Digiraga Studios. And so then, so back in the early 2000s is when I started recording, and I produced my own album. So I got really interested in it, and I recorded, I want to say about 6 or 7 Malayalam devotional songs. We had, so I had the words for them from a music teacher in India. He used to write and compose in Kerala, in Thrissur. So he had written a bunch of these songs that I got from him through a common connection. And that was one of the first times where I made my own music. So I composed the songs, in certain ragas. So, like, I would pick maybe Shenjurati or Sri Ragam. And common ragams that I felt comfortable with. And I would compose, I set them to music, and I then recorded it at home, meaning in my studio. So that's when I kind of really got into multi-track recording and then mixing.
What was that album?
So that album is called Namaha.
Okay.
And we released it here, and it was available online. And then one of the people who heard it, who liked it, also ended up releasing it in India through Giri Traders. Giri Traders happened to listen to it when they were on a trip to the US, and they listened to the song and they said, hey, we'll release it in India. So they actually copy, and they released it in India as well, in Chennai and Bombay. So it was a lot of fun, and that's how I kind of really got into it. And after that, I actually, for the first few years, I actually did quite a few recordings. I ended up composing and programming and producing another devotional album for someone else. So one of the people in the Twin Cities was who we know very closely. She was very interested in producing a music album of devotional songs
Mhm.
for in Telugu and in other
Oh,
languages. So I ended up
interesting.
producing that.
Christian.
And then one of our friends that we knew wanted to produce a Christian devotional album, for which he had written songs. So we recorded that here. We had some
Mhm.
artists who flew in from Chicago, and we recorded.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how I got into Vijays Studios. And honestly, I would say in the last couple of years, I've been focusing more on just making my own productions,
Mhm.
kind of working on things that kind of interest me, where I maybe
Yeah.
take devotional songs or Carnatic songs. I try to arrange them a certain way. I know Prasid, you
Mhm.
recorded some things for me.
Yeah.
Their father came and recorded some things for me. So I work on them, and then I try to see if I
Yeah.
like I'm making that kind of stuff.
Mhm. Wow, that's really amazing. And self-teaching, all of that, it takes years to learn in school, and you just self-taught yourself all
Yeah,
of those knacks.
yeah. It takes a
Especially,
lot of time. It takes when you
Mhm.
are self-learning, it's a lot of trial and error. So you
Mhm.
learn by making a lot of mistakes
Mhm.
and try
Right.
to correct it and correct and correct it. So that the downside of it
Mhm.
takes a long time.
But
Yeah.
The good side of it is you are so invested in it that when you finally crack it and you figure it out, it kind of sticks
Mhm.
with you. Um,
Uh-huh.
so I still recommend to people that if they have the opportunity to get formal training in any of this stuff,
Mhm.
good. But then they
Mhm.
try to learn and practice and try to do it. And even if they don't
Mhm.
get it right, it's okay. It's only when you try and try again that over time you'll be able to figure out exactly how to do it right.
Yeah, that makes
Right.
sense.
And especially like you were doing this like back in like the 90s and the 2000s when the technology wasn't as great as it is right now.
Right. Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
especially during that time and having
Yeah,
such
doing these type of things is it's
such an
very
amazing feat.
astronomical. Yeah. You've also done programs with Geetmala TV, Pangea World Theater, and Ragamala Music. Can you
Right.
tell us something about that?
Yeah, sure.
There's no
So yeah, we did end up doing, Mami and I performed, as we said earlier, for Ragamala.
Mhm.
Actually, we ended up doing it once again many years later with that group when they restaged Valli Kalyanam. We also performed
Mhm.
with them. But during the course of all this, I got introduced to several artists in the Twin Cities. I had occasion to meet up with, Dipankar from Pangea, and they were doing a program. They were doing not a program. They were doing a
stage.
play, a stage play, and
Mhm.
they wanted some Indian music elements.
Mhm.
And I know that very first time, Pavanji, who's a great tabla player in the
Tabla.
movies, and Nirmala were
Mhm.
involved in it, and they needed someone to do keyboard.
Uh-huh.
So at that time, they thought of me and invited me, and it was great to kind of work with them on that event. And through that, then I got introduced to so many other people, and I ended up doing work for several different organizations. And I did some sound design for some stage plays, and I ended up doing some other scores, like sound scores for plays and stuff. So it was a lot of fun.
On the radio.
Yeah, I did
Yeah,
some work on
and the AFM
radio.
radio.
Then local Twin Cities public television, we did Eat
Mhm.
and Chai City.
Geetmala.
hmm.
Wow, that's amazing. I've seen the Geetmala programs on TV and
So
on
have I.
YouTube.
They're so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
concluding everything, is there any advice you would like to give to up and coming artists to better themselves for concerts or even just learning in their learning experiences to better themselves?
like a words of wisdom moment.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
mainly being youngsters. Actually, you all are very young now. You have started and you have reached quite a good stage where you can perform for artists
Mhm.
now. Mridagam, you are doing such a great job, and Pranav, you're
Mhm.
greatly.
Thank you so
So,
much.
what that should not go into your head
Yeah.
and forget about learning aspect. You
Hmm.
should continue to learn. Learning is the main thing that is making you as a personality, and people would love in future. So, so you have to invest in learning your time. Most of the time, you should learn, practice.
Okay.
Of course, you can perform and help others in productions and all that. But your main aim should be to improve yourself. And then that is by listening and practicing. That's what I would advise the younger students of music today.
Yeah.
Yeah. We will definitely take that advice.
Definitely.
And she's spot on, right? So
yeah,
that's the thing, is you never give up the desire to learn and to make yourself better and to improve your skills through practice and repetition. And maybe the one thing I'll add is, don't be afraid to try new things, but at the same time know when it is okay to try, right? In like, much like in anything, you should make sure you practice a lot, and then you can try, right? And even if it doesn't come off okay, it's okay, right? You tried and it didn't come off okay, but the way to get better is to keep learning and focusing on making yourself better, and everything else that follows is a side effect, right? That's all. All the opportunities you get to perform on stage and everything else that comes after that is a side effect of your investment in yourself. So if you do that well, it'll work out.
And I should say, I really appreciate you both, for doing this. And then, it's an amazing thing, and you're putting your brains into work. That is awesome.
It's a great
initiative.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Keep it up.
Yeah.
Wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Mommy.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Vijay. Your support is really meaningful to us.
Absolutely.
I think to conclude, I feel like this is a great concluding question. Why did both of you choose to pursue or part-time or full-time the Carnatic music?
Why did we do Carnatic music? Okay, so to conclude it, I think I'll go first. I think for me it was purely interest, right? So there's a reason I didn't go full-time, because just of the of kind of the necessities of life, if you will, and opportunities were different at that time. But we just kind of kept it to part-time. But we just, the love of the music. That's pretty much it.
That is it. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Vijay and Mommy.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming to our show and kicking us off with our first ever episode.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Make sure to go subscribe and like the video, and look at our Instagram and Facebook page for updates. And thank you for listening. Thank you, Leela, Mommy, and Vijay.
See you.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
This is the Bros signing off.